In this video, we're going to look at the major arteries of the body. So let's start off with the heart. With the heart, we have the major vessel going out to the whole body is going to be the aorta. The aorta consists of the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, and if we turn it around here and peek through the ribs, we see the descending aorta, also called the thoracic aorta. Now, the first branches coming off of the aorta, now you might be fooled into thinking it's this branch right here. Well, it's not. Who's doing all the work? Who wants first dibs on that nicely oxygenated blood? Well, it's going to be the heart. So the first branches, and it doesn't show up too well in this model, but the first branches that are going to be coming off of the aorta are going to be the right and the left coronary arteries. Okay. Now after that, once we get up to the arch, the first major branch coming off is going to be the brachiocephalic artery or brachiocephalic trunk. Okay. You don't have to say right or left in this case because there is only one brachiocephalic artery. In the veins there are two. There's a right and a left brachiocephalic vein. But as far as arteries go, there is only one brachiocephalic artery. And if you notice, the plumbing on the right side of the body is different than the plumbing on the left side of the body, which is why when you first see a patient, you should always check pulses on both sides, and you should take a blood pressure on each side, just to establish a baseline and to make sure that there's no significant difference between the two. Now, here's the brachiocephalic trunk. As we move up, we're going to see the right common carotid. And then the next artery, which is going through the transverse foramen of the cervical vertebrae, is going to be the vertebral artery. Now if we go back again here to the common carotid, this is the right common carotid once again, it's going to branch off into the external carotid and the internal carotid. Okay, and then moving along here, this particular artery is going to be our right subclavian. As you can see, it's going up underneath the clavicle. Then we get kind of in the armpit area here, and we are at our axillary artery. From the axillary artery, and let's see if I can move him just a little bit over. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, from the axillary artery, we're going to turn into the brachial artery. Remember, the brachium is your arm. And as we move down a little bit farther, of course, on the thumb side, we're going to have our radial artery, and on the little finger side, our ulnar artery. And those then are going to, there we go, our deep palmar arch. And look on that vessel, there we go. And the superficial palmar arch. And those are going to contribute then to the digital arteries. Okay, now as we move over to the next vessel off of the aortic arch, that then is going to be our left common carotid. And of course that's going to branch off again into the left external carotid and left internal carotid. Now again, since we don't have a brachiocephalic trunk on this side, the next vessel is going to be our left subclavian. I removed the clavicle just so that we can see it a little bit better, but the left subclavian. Now branching off the subclavian is going to be our left vertebral artery. Okay, and again, it's going to be the same on this side as well, where we're going to have the subclavian, which turns into the axillary, which then turns into the brachial, and then the brachial is going to branch off into our radial and our ulnar arteries, and again our superficial and deep palmar arches and digital arteries. Now let's take a look at the abdominal aorta as it pops through the diaphragm. Okay, so again we start off with the aortic, the ascending aorta, the aortic arch, the descending aorta. Once it pops through the diaphragm, it becomes the abdominal aorta. And the first major branch here is going to be what's called the celiac trunk. So right here is going to be the celiac trunk. And the first big branch coming off of that is going to the spleen. So this is our splenic artery. A branch coming up is going to go to the stomach, and that is the left gastric artery. And then this branch right here, which heads over to the liver, is going to be the common hepatic artery. And so as we move down from that, we're going to see the superior mesenteric artery, which is going to go to the right intestines. So the right side of the intestines. I'm going to skip way down here to the inferior mesenteric arteries, and they are going to pretty much feed the left side of the intestines. Okay, now just underneath the superior mesenteric artery, we're going to have our right and our left renal arteries. There we go. So the right and the left renal arteries. We're going to have these branches here going toward the legs, but this first one is going to be the right common iliac and the left common iliac. And it kind of refers to this bone, which is the ilium. So right, left common iliacs. Then we have a branch that's going to go deep. And so we're going to call that our internal iliac artery. Same thing on this side, the internal iliac artery. So if we have an internal, then we must have a what? Right, an external iliac artery. And we'll see that on both sides. Okay, now we've got a ligament here, and I should have probably put this into the frame here, but this ligament goes from the anterior superior iliac spine down to the top of the pubic bone, and that's our inguinal ligament. Once the external iliac goes underneath that inguinal ligament, it then becomes the femoral artery. And one thing to notice is the femoral artery is fairly superficial in the inguinal region, in the groin region here. And then it's going to start to go deep. Now we do have, let's see, right there, we do have a deep femoral artery, which is one of the first branches coming off the femoral artery. But the femoral artery is going to come down, and then it's going to loop around to the rear of your leg. And it's then going to become the popliteal or popliteal artery, however you'd like to pronounce it. So here's the popliteal or popliteal artery. And that's going to be found in the popliteal fossa of the knee. Okay, the best way to remember that is, if you bend and your knees pop, that's your popliteal or popliteal region. Okay, so we have the popliteal artery that then continues on down behind the tibia. So if it's behind the tibia, a good name for that is going to be the posterior tibial artery. And so there we have the posterior tibial artery. Now a branch coming off of that is going to go toward the front of the tibia. And that is going to be our anterior tibial artery. So here's the anterior tibial. So there's the anterior tibial artery. Then if we move down just a little bit farther, we'll see a branch coming off and going to the fibula. Now we have a couple of names for that. We can call it the peroneal artery, which is an older term, or the fibular artery. Peroneal and fibular refer to the same thing. And if you've already studied muscles, you might have covered the fibularis longus, fibularis brevis, and fibularis tertius, or you might have called it the peroneus brevis, the peroneus longus, and the peroneus tertius. It's the same muscles. Okay, and then as we come around to the top of the foot, the anterior tibial artery is going to give way to the dorsal pedal artery, or dorsalis pedis artery. And that should just about cover the major arteries of the body.